Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I have got a crowd favorite, Andy Sheckman. Thank you for coming on, Andy. It's a pleasure to have you.
You guys, it's been too long. First and foremost, you both look great. Happy Thanksgiving, belated. Happy holidays. And it's an honor to be here. I'm glad to be back. Thanks for inviting me.
It's good to see you. All right, let's
Well,
get
I had to
into it.
shut Andy and Stacy down because they were talking about precious metals 90 to nothing. I said, wait, we got to get this on video. Would you like to start with what you guys were just talking about? Because it was very interesting.
Yeah, so one of the questions we get asked all the time is how do you say if something's counterfeit or not? And Andy and I were talking about that, of how do you do it. And I was telling him about a guy that actually bought a piece of machinery that would test it. And go ahead, Andy, you were talking about the Eagles versus Maples.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm going to apologize in advance. I got some guy cutting tiles outside my office window, so hopefully it's not too loud. But yeah, first of all, in terms of the composition of gold eagles versus other coins, the American gold eagle weighs 1.1 ounce. It has 1/10 of an ounce of silver and copper alloy sprinkled on top of 1 ounce of pure 24 karat gold. So, like most gold coins, with the exception of the Krugerrand, modern mint, are 1 ounce of pure 24 karat gold. The maple leaf, the buffalo, the Philharmonic, the kangaroo, 1 ounce gold bars, 1 ounce of pure 24 karat gold. In the case of the eagle or the Krugerrand, you have 1 ounce of pure 24 karat gold with a little bit of alloy sprinkled on top of it. In the case of both coins, it's mostly silver, a little bit of copper, but that little bit of alloy increases the net weight to 1.1 ounce, decreases the purity to 22 karat. And as I was saying, if you wanted to play poker for real with high stakes, you could play with Krugerrands and eagles, and at the end of the night, they'd look brand new. The maple leafs or the buffaloes or the Philharmonics or the kangaroos would look 100 years old. And that's why in the old Westerns, you'd see the cowboy bite the piece of gold to see his tooth mark in it. The softness of 24 karat gold is a hallmark of that, where you could actually bite it and see your tooth mark. Well, same thing is true about the eagle and the Krugerrand. They give it that alloy for a little bit of strength. And so when you talk about testing metals, it's going to give you a little bit of a different reading. But the question you asked me, and I find it interesting. I mean, in being candid, I said to you, look, I've been doing this for 34 years, and embarrassingly enough, I've done 1,500 YouTube videos in 4 years, and I don't even really know the exact answer to that question, other than the fact that as a company, we have the high-tech machinery that enables us to detect down to 1,000th of an ounce what is inside of a bar or a coin if we decide to test it. Excuse me. The machinery itself isn't much bigger than this, but it probably costs upwards ends of $40,000. It's not practical for the average person to own one of those. But let's just take it from intake to selling it to the customer, at least from our perspective. And this is a reason to buy metal from a reputable company, whether it be Miles Franklin or APMEX or Money Metals Exchange or JM Bullion, whatever it is. There's good companies out there, and if you buy from those companies, you're gonna have a good experience. Period. But regardless, when we get metal in, the first thing that we would do, if it's not directly in a sealed package from a sovereign mint or a reputable refinery, if it's from the public and we have any questions, the very first thing we do is weigh it. Every item should have an acceptable range of less than probably 1/10 of an ounce in weight, including with the tubes that we weigh them in. And if there's any discrepancy whatsoever, the next thing we do is check every item with this machinery. It's similar to, don't even know what you would call it, but when a woman is pregnant, you put it on the tummy to see the baby inside. It's very similar to that. And it will tell you on a readout just like that, down to 1,000th of a gram, what the composition is. So I'll be honest with you both. In 34 years, I've seen one coin in silver, or a batch of coins. They were Morgan silver dollars. They were counterfeit once. And I have seen 1 or 2 gold coins that were counterfeit, yet they were gold. Now, what I mean by that is that they were very sophisticated numismatic looking coins. So in other words, they take a piece of gold and they make it look like it's an old $20 gold piece. So in 34 years, I've seen 3 examples of counterfeit. That's with 9 billion in transactions. It's not something that happens very often. And, the real reason is, and when you talk about buying coins versus large bars, you buy a 1,000-ounce bar, a really crafty metallurgist might be able to hollow it out, fill it with tungsten or something along those lines and cap it off. But in coins and in small bars, it's nearly impossible. And this is why gold and silver have been wealth for almost 6,000 years. You hold it in your hand and it plays tricks with your eyes. The feeling of gold and silver is something that's nearly impossible to duplicate. And it's almost in our DNA. I mean, man has been in search of this just like fire since the beginning of time. And it's something that when you hold a gold coin or when you hold a silver coin, you pretty much know immediately if there are very few, if any, elements other than tungsten that would even resemble the feeling of gold. And so, look, buy from a reputable dealer, you're going to be okay. As far as the actual testing it, there are companies out there that sell little plastic testers that you drop the coin in. If it doesn't fit through, it's not legit. There are ways that you can test it. I don't know the names of it, but I've seen them around. Buy from a legitimate company, whether it be us or any other, and you'll be okay.
I agree with you 100%. That's what I tell people all the time. We guarantee it. Another question I get asked all the time, Andy, and by the way, thanks for answering these questions, because sometimes I tell people this, but coming from you, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, so I think it'll give more credibility to it. But it says, do my orders get reported to the government? And I know if we have cash, like money orders, cashier's checks over a certain amount, it gets reported. Can you explain that a little bit? Because that is the question I get asked every single day almost.
Yeah, so whether you're buying gold or going to a Ford dealership in your hometown to buy a new F-150, or going to Bloomingdale's and buying a new wardrobe for you and Chris and your extended family, and you pay with $100 bills, they're going to issue you a Form 8300 once you get above $10,000. It doesn't matter if you're buying gold or any other retail asset in the United States. Form 8300 basically says, okay, Chris and Stacy, you guys just bought a new F-150 and you paid with $100 bills. What's your name, your address, your social security number, and the number of bills and denominations that you pay. Now, if you've been making a decent living and been paying your taxes, you're not going to get a knock on your door. But if you've been slinging dope on the corner for the past 20 years and have never filled out a W-2, and all of a sudden, how'd you come up with all this cash? You may get that knock on your door. Now, that is the premise of a Form 8300, whether you're buying gold or anything else. However, if you, and as you mentioned, money orders or cashier's checks are considered cash instruments. So in excess of $10,000, that would be the case. Now, with that being said, if you pay with a check or a wire, you can spend unlimited amounts of money, any amount you want, and there is no dealer reporting whatsoever. So dealer reporting only comes into play if you're paying with cash or cash instruments, and that would be the same here or at Bloomingdale's or at the Ford dealership in your hometown or anywhere else in the United States where you decide to spend over 10 grand in cash. It would be the obligation of that institution or that retailer to issue you a Form 8300.
Yep, that's exactly right. All right, the next question I get asked, thanks for answering these, taxes. I have had, and you guys have probably noticed this, I've been selling with you guys for about 2 years now, and it wasn't until probably the last couple of months I was telling Chris that I've noticed we're having buybacks. And I'm having a lot of people asking me, what are the taxes on buybacks? What are you going to have to pay taxes, report it? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and you can see as the prices moved up, there is some capitulation out there. People are saying it's taking too long to get here. And I would say we ain't seen anything yet. And I want to talk about that in a moment. I'd love to talk about one thing if we get some time at the end, why I don't think this is a time to be selling. However, for those that need to sell, absolutely. So whenever you sell anything as an investment, Uncle is sitting there with, his hands open saying, well, I want my piece. Most of what you would sell in this industry does not trigger dealer reporting requirements. There are some, and we can talk about that here in a second. But whether it is a dealer that is reporting it via 1099 on your behalf or not, it is still your obligation to tell uncle that you sold some metal and you paid X, you got paid Y. The difference between the two would be either your gain or your loss, period. Dealer reporting requirements come into play on the following metrics. In gold, if you sell there are 3 coins and then gold bars that trigger dealer reporting on sellback. That's it, nothing else. So it's Krugerrands, it's Maple Leafs, and it's Mexican 50 pesos. That's it, in excess of 24 ounces in one transaction. So if you sell 25 of any of those coins in one transaction, a 1099-B miscellaneous income form is filled out on your behalf. It doesn't say what you bought it for. It just says that Chris and Stacy sold 27 ounces of gold Krugerrands, and here's what they got for it. Now, that would match up with your filing, hopefully, on your taxes, and there's no problem. Now, if you were to sell 24, wait a few days or a week or two. Don't tell the dealer I'm sitting on 400 Krugerrands and I'm not paying taxes, so I'm going to sell 24 at a time. Don't do that. Just simply call and say, I got 24 coins to sell. Sell them. Call back a few days later. Hey, I got another 24 coins to sell. Sell them. They're unrelated transactions. That is completely and totally legal. No reporting. Cross 25 at one time. And those 3 coins only, Krugerrands, Maple Leafs, Mexican 50 pesos, dealer reporting is required. Now on gold bars, it's in excess of a kilo, which is 32.15 ounces. So here again, you have 1 ounce gold bars. You could sell 32 at a time indefinitely. Separate transactions. Now you can't send a company 100 bars and say, break it up into 3 transactions or 4 transactions for me. No, do it the right way. 32 bars, 24 coins. Great. You have maximum privacy. What we try to do is get you to get to the line of legality, look over it, don't step over it. We teach you how to go and to take advantage of your legal reporting. What am I trying to say? To not go further than you have to, but to show you what you can do in terms of maximizing your profit. I mean, your privacy, excuse me, maximizing your privacy.
Yeah, just like when we do shipping, there's that legal loophole. It's the taxes. It's not who buys it. It's where you ship it to.
That's right. Now, real quick, in silver, it's similar. It's silver bars in excess of 1,000 ounces. Sell 990 ounces. Sell 950. Legal. And then junk silver, dimes, quarters, and half dollars minted prior to 65. Anything over $1,000 face value would trigger it. That's it. So silver bars and junk silver, 1,000 face and junk, which is 715 ounces, or 1,000 ounces in bar form would trigger it. Mexican 50 peso, Krugerrands, Maple Leafs above 24 ounces, or gold bars above a kilo. And that's it. Nothing else triggers it.
I love it.
But it's always your responsibility to pay the taxes, even if the dealer isn't doing it on your behalf.
Right. I get asked that all the time. All right. Another question, and I want to get into what you just said earlier. Chris, do you have anything you want to jump in?
Go ahead.
So you want to say, you said some, you want to add there toward the end. So I want to hear what you have to say. But I get asked also, what should I hold when it comes to a gold silver ratio? I get asked this, well, pretty much daily. What is a good ratio to hold?
That's a good one. What's Andy Sheckman do?
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal. I think the biggest event of my career happened in April of 2019, and that was the Bank of International Settlements, which is the most sophisticated and influential bank on the planet. They are the central bank. They kind of rule the roost. They reclassify gold as the world's only other tier 1 reserve asset. Let me just say that one more time. The only other tier 1 reserve asset other than US dollars and treasuries since the end of World War II. And that probably is why the central banks of the world have been buying more gold over the past 20 months than at any time ever in history. They understand what's coming. They understand what gold represents. And I believe it will represent a peg to the new system, backing of a new system, because, the old saying, fool me once, shame on me. or shame on you rather, fool me 7,000 times, shame on me. And that's kind of what the fiat currency system has been. And so I think in order to get people to legitimize a new currency, a new system, it will have to be pegged to something. And well, what better to do than the only other tier one reserve asset in the world? So if I had one trade to make, and only one trade, it would be gold because of that. The most influential and well-funded and well-informed traders on the globe are telling us that. But when you look at silver, I believe it is a generational opportunity. I do not think you get opportunities like this, but maybe once a lifetime. And I mean that sincerely. There are very few assets that I can think of that have a better story behind it than silver. It is an asset that is massively depleting in nature. It is an asset that is massively growing in demand in industrial applications, in military applications, and also has experienced a 3-year renaissance in monetary demand. You have an asset that has duality in demand, actually 3 sources of demand: military, industrial, green, and digital, and investment. At the same time, it's decreasing in nature. And when you realize that it's coming out of the ground right now at a 7-to-1 ratio to gold, meaning they mine 7 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold, yet for 5,000 years, that number was 16-to-1. It's decreasing in nature. And the reason for that, very simply, like your skin is epidermis, silver is found in nature in a form called epithermal, right near the surface. The big deposits were found a long time ago. So in fact, of all the silver that's mined right now, only 35% comes from companies that actually mine silver. The other 65% come from companies that have no business mining silver whatsoever. In fact, they're mining other elements like copper or tin or lead or gold, and they stumble across some silver. It is an asset that is decreasing in nature, increasing in demand globally on many different levels. To me, it is as intriguing of an investment as you will ever find, ever. And so I would say to you this: if I had the intentions of playing a calculated speculation, you buy silver right now. And when the ratio, right now, the price ratio is roughly 81 or 82-to-1, that is an anomaly. You folks live in Texas. It would be as if you woke up in the morning and found 6 feet of snow in your backyard. You're not going to call the Polaris dealership and buy a snowmobile. You would know that it's an anomaly. The same thing is true here from a geologic context and from a historical context, going back to the beginning of time. This is an anomaly in terms of its price. So you buy silver at 81 or 2-to-1. And if all that happens as it gets back to its 100-year average, price average of about 40-to-1, and it's been that way for 100 years, largely because of gold's role as money, silver's role more of an industrial metal until now, and the storage aspect. So the price ratio for the last 100 years has been about 40-to-1, even though the geologic ratio was 16-to-1. Well, now the price ratio is 80-to-1 and the geologic ratio is 7-to-1. Something's not right here. So you buy silver right now at 80-to-1. And if all that happens is we go back to its 100-year average, which, hey, if all you're trying to do is get to the average, that's not too much to ask for. That's a double when you switch back into gold. If it gets anywhere near its geologic ratio, and at some point, if silver, this is the 3rd year in a row, we're going to have a massive shortfall in supply versus demand, about 250 million ounces of mine supply versus demand. At some point, that geologic ratio has to hook up with real life numbers. So you could argue even at 40-to-1, you're 6 times undervalued in relationship to its geological footprint, its mining ratio. So let me just make this real easy to understand. If I had one trade to make and only one, and genie comes out of the bottle, I'm buying gold because it's the only other tier 1 reserve asset in the world. And the central banks, who not only are the wealthiest, but the most well-informed investors on the planet, are telling you that. But they're also buying silver. India just imported 60 million ounces in October and 304 million ounces last year. I mean, they're crushing the available supply. They're taking as much as they can. China imported 10 million ounces of silver in October as well, and Turkey is importing a ton. And this is going on and on and on. But the point I'm getting at is this: if I had two trades to make. I load up on silver right now at 80 to 1. And when we get to its 200-year average of 40 to 1, I begin to start trading it to gold. You double what you could otherwise buy today. And that's still 6 times above its mining ratio. You could expect in reality, you know, a 2, a 3, or a 4-fold return on your silver to gold investment when you switch back to gold. Now, is it guaranteed? No. In golfing terms, it's not quite a gimme putt, but it's about a 2-foot putt where you got about a 95% chance of it happening. And I really do believe it is the trade of a generation. Buy silver, wait for the ratio to correct just to its average of 100 plus years, and then switch to gold. And you would double, at worst, you would double what you started with.
That's kind of what we've been playing a little bit.
Yeah, it just makes sense. A lot of savvy investors plan on doubling their precious metals holdings by playing the ratio, just like you're talking about. And as far as things making sense, look, everybody, the economy and things as we know it are completely divorced from reality. Silver, when it gets going, might be like crypto. It might be the thing everybody wants because the dollar is going so far down. Silver's easy to get to. It's easy to hand back and forth. It might pass 40 to 1 and go straight up to that 7 to 1 you're talking about.
That's exactly right. I couldn't have said it better, Chris. I mean, that's really the right way to say it, more concisely than I just did. And I agree with that. Look, in 2010, I woke up and I called my buddy Bix Weir. And I say, Bix, this is the first YouTube I ever did. I said, we got to do a YouTube right now. I said, it's 85 to 1, the ratio. I said, it's the second time in human history it's been there. Second time, 85 to 1 in 2010. I called everyone I knew and said, we need to switch your gold to silver right now. I did a YouTube with Bix. Everyone, sell your gold, buy silver right now. And I would sell the gold to the industry and I would switch it to silver. Within 7 months, in mid-2011, you had $50 silver and 1915 gold. That's 37 to 1. Anyone who would have traded at 85 to 1, 7 months later would have only needed 37 ounces to go back into gold, making almost 2.5 times what they started with without outlaying a penny. And that's exactly how it will work. And so at 80 plus to 1, you're talking about it being here less than 1/5 of 1% of the time in the last 100 years. This is an anomaly in every sense of the word. So yeah, from a trade standpoint, I think it's the trade of a generation. But one trade and only one trade, I'm buying gold because in the end, the biggest money in the world is telling you that's where they're putting their money.
The exact same way. The exact banks are buying gold. It's like, man, gold is super safe. You know, it is like there's no way around it. But then you got that silver ratio. It's just,
I didn't want to I didn't want to just say one thing.
Let's leave the rest of the questions for another video, and I want to give you the last word because you said.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you, Stacy. So here's the deal. You know, for the last 4 years, I've done 1,500 videos on the BRICS. I was talking about it before anyone, maybe other than the economic ninja. The two of us together have been talking about it for a long time, and I give him credit. He's tipped me on a lot of stuff, and but I will tell you this. My ultimate thesis has always been that Saudi Arabia dumps the dollar for sole settlement currency for oil. And it's been the protection of the Saudi kingdom since 1974 that has given us the dollar hegemony. They said, you protect us and we'll value oil in dollars through OPEC. And that's the way that it's been. Now, in the last year, we've seen Saudi Arabia join the BRICS. Every OPEC country on the Belt Road, they've joined the BRICS New Development Bank. They joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is the largest regional financial and military organization on the planet. They're in essence being protected by 2 of the 3 largest nuclear arsenals on the planet. And with the BRICS, you're talking the majority of all the oil, the majority of all the natural gas, the majority of all the commodities. Now, the United States signed an executive order to go green. The Biden administration did right when we walked into office. Now, why the heck would we want to go green if it's the protection of the Saudi kingdom that gives us the hegemony, right? Why would we want to do that? And at the same time, we weaponize the dollar against 2 of the 3 BRICS countries in Iran and in Russia. So as we're weaponizing the dollar, making every other country say, geez, are they going to do that to us? And then And then we tell the linchpin of the dollar hegemony, hey, guys, thanks for everything for the last 50 years, but we decided to go green. Now, it's interesting that the number one economic advisor to this country, a man named Jared Bernstein, is his whole thesis. He's the number one chief economic advisor to the Biden administration. His whole thesis is to lose the world reserve status. He wrote a report that was picked up by the New York Times called Dethrone King Dollar, in which he advocates for this. When Trump slapped tariffs on China, he said, fantastic, maybe we'll lose our reserve status. That was picked up by the Washington Post. Dethrone King Dollar was picked up by the New York Times. So your chief economic advisor wants to lose the reserve status. How do you do it? Weaponize the dollar against the world and then tell Saudi Arabia we're going green. Now, I've said for 4 years, the ultimate end game is that Saudi Arabia and OPEC, remember, every OPEC country is on the Belt Road, every one of them, that they say, hey, you guys are going green, we're going a different direction. Thanks, we're going to take another currency for oil. Now, we were told by the BRICS that they have tasked their finance ministers to going back to the drawing board and coming back to the next meeting in August with a sole settlement currency idea. Now, again, why do I think gold will be part of it? Because what is the only other tier one reserve asset? Oh, yeah, it's gold. Who's been buying it all? Oh, yeah, it's the BRICS nations. So, look, something happened 2 days ago that is a massive, massive shot across the bow. Maybe the biggest short of what I see ultimately happening with OPEC. And let me just read to you one thing here, because I think this is the biggest thing that we have seen. I'm so sorry for that. This is the biggest thing that we've seen since I started talking about this stuff. And it's a very short little tidbit here. And here it is. The United Arab Emirates officially stops using dollars for oil trades. United Arab Emirates is eyeing potential oil and gas deals with up to 15 countries, including China, Russia, and Egypt, all of whom are BRICS members and advocates of the continued de-dollarization. The UAE is not just following a trend, it's setting a big one. It's no coincidence, by the way, in my opinion, that this week or early next week, they have a summit on environmental stuff with over 60 countries coming to the UAE, to Dubai. At the same time, they just told the world we're not taking dollars for oil anymore. Now, what happens when Saudi Arabia and the rest of OPEC says, hey, guys, thanks. You're going green. You've signed an executive order. What amounts to 85% of human population in the BRICS and the Belt Road and all of these countries that are joining together, well, we're not. So you're okay anyway. Like that, every country on the planet dumps dollars, which creates hyperinflation. And as that hyperinflation, it roars, interest rates have to spike to compensate. But this is exactly what the lead economic advisor for the United States government wants. But why would he want that? Why? Because we have nearly $200 trillion in debt, 33 trillion on balance sheet, and almost 160 in unfunded liabilities, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government military pensions, and we're broke. We're insolvent. We have 5 trillion in assets. The biggest asset, over 40% of the US government's assets, according to the 2022 balance sheet, is student debt of 1.6 trillion. Are you kidding me? I want to puke hearing that. Student debt, right? So we're insolvent. We're almost exactly at 130% debt to GDP. There has never been a country in the world that's crossed that line ever that hasn't defaulted, either outright or by hyperinflation. So why would we incentivize the world to dump the dollar as the reserve currency and reset the whole system like Klaus Schwab says when interest rates spike to double, triple digit? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Because we're broke, we're insolvent, and people would say, well, there are two choices. They can inflate their way out of it or they can default. I agree. How about a third option? Find a villain, those sons of bitches. Those sons of bitches, OPEC and Xi Jinping and Putin, they did it to us. How could they do that to us? You have a rallying cry against everything collapsing. And guess who's the number 2 lead economic advisor to this country? Lael Brainerd. She is a modern monetary theorist. She worked at the Treasury. She just came from the Fed underneath Powell as vice chair. She worked with MIT in development of the central bank digital currency that Biden wrote into executive order, that the BIS said every country needs to have one by 2025 in operation. And she also just launched FedNow. FedNow just came out 2 months ago. And for your listeners who don't know what FedNow is, they will within a year. FedNow is Zelle and Venmo on steroids backed by the Federal Reserve. It will take the place of checks and wires for everyone within 1 year. It is the appetizer into the central bank digital currency. And basically, you know, if you wanted to buy gold from Stacy, oh, Stacy, I just fed now you $100,000 that's in your account. Oh, great, thanks. It's that fast. It's instant settlement. She ran point for it, and she also worked with MIT when she was at the Boston Fed in development of the central bank digital currency. This is what they want. They want to blow up the system, and they want to issue a new central bank digital currency. Well, Lael Brainard's whole thesis is to cull the banks, get rid of the banks, and have one central bank issuing the currency with 3 or 4 or 5 big commercial banks doing all the mortgages and the loans and the leases. That's exactly on the path that we are heading down, because look at the banks. The banks are upside down, completely undercapitalized and over-leveraged with assets on their balance sheets at 50 cents on the dollar. This is why we're seeing the problems with the banks. What happens if interest rates spike to the moon? Not by Powell, but by the market saying, well, your dollar's awful and getting dumped by everyone across the globe because we don't need it for oil anymore. Well, you know, let's put interest rates at 20, 25%. What happens to this economy? What happens to the banking sector? The entire thing blows up. Now take a step back. The lead economic advisor advocates for losing the world reserve currency. Weaponize the dollar, tell Saudi Arabia we're going green. That's a pretty good 1-2 punch. The second in charge wants to get rid of all the banks and go modern monetary theory directly from the central bank, and issuing a central bank digital currency that was written into law, and the BIS said everyone needs to have one. How do you do it? How do you do it without pissing everyone off? Well, you have a villain that dumped the dollar for oil settlement. Everything collapsed. It was their fault. But have no fear. I know your bank account just collapsed and you lost everything. I know your 401k is gone and you lost everything. Have no fear. Lael Brainard is here with the central bank digital currency. Modern monetary theory would say, we'll print anything you'd like. Sign on the dotted line, Chris and Stacy, and we'll make you whole. You've got to take the central bank digital currency, relinquish all your privacy. But you know what? All that money you lost, hey, you're going to get it in your new account. Now, when I was saying this stuff 2-3 years ago, I was trying to connect the dots. Seeing the United Arab Emirates, which is this close to the rest of OPEC, saying we're not taking dollars anymore. When you see OPEC make that statement, that'll be one of the scariest days this country has ever seen. And if you do not own something outside the system, like you said, Chris, cryptocurrencies in your own possession or gold and silver in your own possession, I think you are doomed to be one hell of a victim. I do believe if you are not a contrarian right now, you're going to be a victim. And that move by UAE should have been front and center news on every newspaper, on every television station, on everything over the last 48 hours. And you don't hear one peep from the mainstream media, who is leading all of us to slaughter because you can't get the hell out of the way of what you don't see coming. And that move, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the biggest shot across the bows that this country has ever faced in the past 50 years, and not a word from the mainstream. So when people say, should I sell my gold right now? Yeah, if you need to, that's what it's there for. But I will tell you, for the first time in my life, as a father of 3 kids, I'm scared for the life, for the world my 3 kids are growing up in, and largely because of the exorbitant privilege we have enjoyed for 50 years as being the reserve currency or the petrodollar. It's this close to coming to an end. And that's why I think this is absolutely not the time to be selling your gold and silver. And I hope I'm wrong, but in everything I've talked about for 4 years, the scariest part about it is all played out. And it's played out faster than I thought it would. Now, I'm not a magician. I'm not a soothsayer. I just have maybe the only thing that I've been fortunate enough to do is look at all of these isolated events over the last 4 years and put them together in a progression. And you put them together, it's a, whoa, that's a puzzle. You put the pieces together. In and of themselves, it's like a puzzle with all the pieces all over the place. It doesn't make sense. But I will tell you this one piece of information to me is the scariest thing I've seen in 4 years.
I
Not
agree.
time to be selling the metals.
Andy, in the next video, I want to talk about how you fight 2 wars, how you take care of all the entitlement class, how you have a broken economy with high interest rates, and the rest of the planet get out of actively moving out of the dollar.
Yeah.
I want to get in on how does this end up and how has it happened through history? Not this time, but it is so overwhelmingly obvious what's going on. I mean, it's going to happen. We just don't have a crystal ball. But I want to thank you so much for being here, man.
It's my pleasure. You know, I'm honored to work with you guys. I have been since the first day that we talked. I still remember that day. Chris, I remember talking to you about your weightlifting machines. I still remember it. It's weird. I can't remember sometimes to zip up my zipper. My wife says, "Why is your zipper always down?" I don't know, but I can remember talking to you the first time, and it's an honor, both of you. It's an honor to be associated with both of you, and I'd love to come back on as much as you would have me. I wish you, your family, and everyone out there a happy holidays, happy, healthy New Year. And it's going to be I think the next year, almost exactly from today, will be the craziest year maybe in all of our lives, as maybe the most important election of all of our lives takes place every year. And that bank funding program where $112 billion was emergency lent out to all of these banks, it's all due to be paid back in March. These banks are underwater. It's going to be one heck of a ride. And as the Chinese say, may you live in interesting times. That's a curse, by the way. Chinese curse. You live in interesting times. Hey, I preferred way back when, before cell phones and computers, when everything was dull and complacent. But if you have to live through these times, better to listen to people like you who are providing information so people can at least make educated decisions. And so God bless you both for that. Thanks for letting me be a small part of it. And yes, I'd love to come back. So say the word and we'll pick up where we left off.
Sounds good. It's good to see you.
Guys, if anybody's interested in precious metals, Stacy's a broker, 4 Miles Franklin. Been doing business with Andy and his family for
years.
Ever. And what I did was I went and I tried to get the best deal. That was what I did. And I expect you to do the same thing. But you're going to find out if someone does beat Miles Franklin, it's going to be extremely small margins. And you have Stacy handling and taking care of business. So you actually have a broker. It's like going into a real estate deal without a real estate agent. You know, you could, that transaction could cost you a lot of money if you don't know what you're doing. And there's just a lot of history and between us that I value. You know,
I do too, Chris, more than you know. You know, I liken it to like a hardware store. You know, when you were young, your guys are the same age group as me. And when you were young, you'd go to a hardware store, you'd walk in and they'd say, "Oh, Mr. Taylor, how are you, sir? Good to see you, buddy. What can I help you with?" He'd hop out from behind the counter and he'd be right there to help you. Go to Home Depot and you're lost. You find someone, "Hey, where do I find lug nuts?" "Oh, I think they're down there somewhere." The point of it is that you never understand how important it is to have a relationship until there's an issue or a problem. And I think that's where we're heading. Relationships will mean everything. So yeah, I thank you for your kind words.
Your cow that you eat, you need to create a relationship with your farmers. Create those handshake, look in my eye type relationships, and you'll learn to trust the person, and you can move on from there.
Couldn't agree
more.
Home
Depot was a very good analogy. Well, buddy, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, man, let's do this again before the end of the year. I'm happy to come back next week even, because I know there's a lot of questions that you want that get answered, and I have a bad habit of just running with things, but I'm sorry for capitalizing all the time. I'd love to come back and pick up where we left off, even as soon as next week. So
perfect.
Let me know.
The exact same time next week.
Roger that. All the best to you both.
Have an awesome day.
Later. You too, brother. Bye, guys.